think about this for a second. You've got this guy in Wichita, Kansas. Seems like a totally ordinary life, right?
Right. On the surface, completely unremarkable.
Air Force veteran, involved in his church, even a Cub Scout leader, just
Yeah.
normal.
But underneath that, something truly terrifying. This same man was the BTK killer.
BTK bind, torture, kill, held the city in fear for decades. It's just that contrast is unbelievable.
It really is. And that's what we're diving into today, the story of Dennis Rader. How did he pull off this double life for so long? And the twists that finally led to him getting caught. It's quite a story.
Yeah, it really is. And we've got a lot of material to work with here to piece it together.
We do. We're looking at things like psychological studies. There's one by Matthew Hutnian focusing specifically on Rader as a case study in psychopathy. Very insightful.
Okay, so the why behind it all.
Exactly. And then we've got timelines, like from biography.com, laying out the crimes chronologically. CBS News gives us a look at the victims, which is crucial to remember. And Roy Wenzel's book, Bind, Torture, Kill, takes us deep inside the investigation itself.
Right, the police side of things. And there's more, isn't there? Something about a book written with Rader.
Yeah, well, a review of Confession of a Serial Killer. It involved direct communication with him to try and understand his mindset. Obviously, you take that with a grain of salt, but it's part of the picture.
Definitely. And we can't forget the tech angle, which ended up being huge in this case.
Oh, absolutely critical. We've got sources like Blue Goat Cyber, BRG Insights, talking about digital forensics, that floppy disk. We'll get into that.
Okay, and Psychology Today pieces looking at his capture, his ego maybe.
All of it. So our goal here is basically to pull out the key insights from all this. Rader's life, his crimes, how they hunted him, how he got caught, the psychology, the tech. Give you a really solid understanding without drowning in every single detail.
Sounds good. So where do we start? His early life.
Let's do that. Wichita, Kansas. Like you said, outwardly a pretty normal childhood. Boy Scouts, church, the whole 9 yards.
Seems almost cliche, the all-American kid.
Right. But even back then, apparently, he was having these really dark, violent fantasies. Hidden completely, of course.
Which just sets up that shocking contrast later on, doesn't it? The family man, Air Force vet, president of the church council, leading Cub Scouts.
While simultaneously planning and carrying out these horrific acts, it's hard to wrap your head around.
His first known murders, that was the Otero family in January 1974, right?
Yes. Joseph and Julia Otero and their 2 young children, Josephine and Joseph II. Just wiped out the whole family.
And wasn't there a connection? Didn't he work with Julie?
He did. They both worked at the Coleman Equipment Company. It adds this extra layer of chilling proximity.
Yeah, proximity and planning. And then he attacked again just a few months later, April 74.
That's right. Catherine Bright, another Coleman employee, tragically. He attacked her and her brother Kevin.
Kevin survived, didn't he? Miraculously.
Yeah, they did, yeah. Shot in the head but survived. Couldn't save his sister, though. Rader stabbed her. So right away, you see this pattern emerging.
And then not long after that, he starts talking. October 74.
That's when he first contacted the police, introduced that name, BTK. Bind them, torture them, kill them.
So it wasn't just about the killing. He needed the credit. He needed the notoriety.
Absolutely. A profound need for recognition. He sent a letter to the Wichita Eagle newspaper, and it had details about the Otero murders that only the killer could possibly know, proving it was him.
Wow. Just announcing himself. And this need for attention, this taunting, that continued, right?
Oh, yeah. Became a hallmark. He killed Shirley Vian in March 77, Nancy Fox in December 77, and there was a near miss, Anna Williams, in April 79. She wasn't home when he broke in, luckily.
And his methods were consistent, the binding, strangulation.
Very much his signature. And he kept communicating, sent that weird poem to the Eagle after Shirley Vian's murder.
Right, the Shirley Locks one. Creepy.
Incredibly creepy. Then a letter to KPTV, almost demanding they give him a cool nickname like the BTK Strangler. Just brazen.
Did they ever release any of that? Like his voice?
They did. They broadcast the 911 call he made reporting Nancy Fox's murder. They were hoping anyone might recognize the voice. But nothing came of it then.
So he's active, he's taunting, and then things go quiet sometimes.
Exactly. That's another disturbing part. He'd commit these terrible crimes, then just seemingly vanish back into his normal life for years.
So the police are trying to figure this out. They set up a task force.
In 1984. They called it the Ghostbusters Task Force, kind of informally.
Yeah.
Trying to catch this phantom killer. And interestingly, a young detective named Ken Landwehr was part of it. Remember that name?
Okay, Ken Landwehr. Got it. But the killings didn't stop there, did they?
No. Despite their efforts, he struck again. Rain Hedge in April '85, she lived just down the street from him, incredibly.
Down the street. Wow.
Then Vicky Wegerle in September '86. That was a tragic one. Her husband was actually suspected for a while.
Oh, man. That's awful.
Yeah. And then Dolores Davis in January 1991, after her murder.
Mm.
Another long silence. Years went by.
I must have felt like he was gone for good. Or maybe died or moved away.
People definitely thought that.
Yeah.
Until January 2004, it had been 30 years since the Otero murders, and the Wichita Eagle ran this anniversary piece, basically saying the BTK case had gone cold.
And that poked the bear.
That's exactly what it did. Rader himself later said that article sort of woke him up again. That need for attention just flared right back up. One source called it an insatiable lust for attention.
And that ego, that need, was ultimately his undoing.
Precisely. Because he started communicating again. March 2004, another package to the Eagle, this time signed Bill Thomas Kilman.
BTK, clever. What was in it?
Vicky Wegerle's driver's license, photos from the crime scene, his BTK symbol. No doubt about it, he was back.
And he sent something else too, right? A puzzle.
Yep. May 2004, sent a puzzle to Kike TV. And incredibly, buried in that puzzle were clues that investigators actually managed to link back to his own address. They were getting closer.
But the real nail in the coffin, that was the floppy disk, wasn't it? February 2005.
That was the moment.
Yeah.
The critical mistake. He sent a floppy disk, remember those,
Yeah.
to Kike TV.
He'd actually asked the police if floppy disks were traceable, hadn't he? And they kind of misled him.
They did. Lieutenant Landwehr, remember him? Essentially told him, yeah, they were safe. Rader believed him, maybe thought he had some kind of rapport with the police. Big mistake.
Because technology had moved on.
Massively. Digital forensics was a whole new ballgame compared to the 70s. They examined that disk, and specifically, the metadata.
Metadata, that's like the hidden information on a file.
Exactly. Data about the data. And on a deleted file on that disk, like something he thought was gone, the metadata showed it was last saved by a user named Dennis at Christ Lutheran Church.
Oh, way.
Yes, way. So they check records for Christ Lutheran Church. Who's involved there? Dennis Rader, president of the church council.
Wow. Just like that. The name finally surfaces after 30 years.
Just like that, the digital breadcrumb trail led right to him.
But they needed more than just metadata, presumably. They needed concrete proof.
Right. And that's where DNA came in. Crucially, the original investigators, the Ghostbusters team, had preserved evidence meticulously from those early crime scenes.
So they had DNA from back then.
They did. Specifically, DNA found under Catherine Bright's fingernails from way back in 1974.
Okay. So how did they match it to Rader?
This is where it gets interesting. They needed Rader's DNA, but they got it indirectly. They obtained a warrant for a Pap smear sample from his daughter without her knowing its ultimate purpose at first.
Whoa.
Yeah. And they ran a familial DNA test, comparing the daughter's DNA to the crime scene DNA. It showed a strong familial link, meaning the killer was almost certainly her father.
That's incredible. The combination of old evidence and new technology.
Absolutely. The digital forensics pointed the finger, and the DNA confirmed it beyond reasonable doubt.
So with all that, they moved in.
They did. February 25, 2005, Dennis Rader was arrested. And faced with the evidence, especially the DNA, he apparently knew the game was up.
Did he confess quickly?
Pretty much straight away, yeah. He confessed to all 10 murders. And in court, he gave these chillingly detailed, unemotional accounts of everything he did. Selecting victims, stalking them, the actual murders.
Just laid it all out. No remorse.
Seemed like none whatsoever. It was quite disturbing to witness, according to reports. He pleaded guilty in June 2005.
And the sentence?
August 2005. He got 10 consecutive life sentences. That adds up to 175 years without any possibility of parole.
Why not the death penalty? Kansas has it now, right?
It does now, but it wasn't in place at the time he committed the murders. So legally, they couldn't apply it retroactively. Life without parole was the maximum possible sentence.
Okay, that makes sense. So let's circle back to the psychology. You mentioned that study by Hutnian. What did it find?
Well, it strongly suggests Rader fits the profile for psychopathy. Lots of those traits. Plus, elements of antisocial and narcissistic personality disorders.
Narcissism. That fits with the need for attention. The ego.
Definitely. And the psychopathy helps explain that shocking lack of empathy, the ability to live that double life, to inflict such cruelty without apparent remorse. It's that core contrast against the normal-seeming guy, the monster underneath. His meticulous planning, needing total control over his projects, as he called them.
Projects.
Yeah.
So.
And that constant craving for recognition, it all points to a really deeply disordered mind.
And that book, The Confession of a Serial Killer one, where the author worked with him, that must have offered some really disturbing glimpses inside his head.
I mean, yeah, looking at his drawings, his letters, his codes, trying to decipher his motivations is a chilling endeavor, trying to understand that kind of darkness from the source itself.
And we absolutely have to talk more about the technology, the digital forensics. That floppy disk metadata was really the key that unlocked it all after decades, wasn't it?
It really was the breakthrough. Sources like Blue Goat Cyber, BRG, they emphasize this point. After all the traditional police work, which was extensive, it came down to analyzing that hidden data on a disk.
That deleted file saved by Dennis at the church. Just one tiny digital slip-up.
Exactly. They used forensic software like Encase, which is designed specifically to recover and analyze this kind of data, even if it's been deleted. It just shows how crucial digital evidence became.
It's a game changer for investigations, isn't it? Things people think are gone might still be there digitally.
Absolutely. And Rader's own ego, as Psychology Today pointed out, really played into it. He thought he was smarter than everyone. He actually felt like betrayed that Lieutenant Landwehr had lied to him about the floppy disk being untraceable.
He thought they had what, some kind of killer caught understanding?
It seems like it. He genuinely believed he could play this game with them, feed them clues, but stay in control. That arrogance, that grandiosity made him careless.
So his need to be seen to play the game ultimately tripped him up more than anything.
You could definitely argue that. That need to communicate, to boast, to engage with the police on his terms.
Mm.
It created the opening they needed. His trust in Landwehr, based on that inflated ego, was a fatal miscalculation for him.
It's just a tangled mess of ego, psychopathy, and ultimately a floppy disk.
Pretty much sums it up. But, amidst all the focus on him and how he was caught, we have to remember the victims and their families.
Absolutely. Decades of terror, uncertainty, grief.
Unimaginable suffering. The case being solved brought answers, maybe some closure, but it also reopens all those wounds. And hearing Rader in court, some of the things he said.
Like what?
Well, one source mentioned his belief that his victims would become like his slaves in the afterlife, just utterly warped, disturbing beliefs that show how far removed from reality his thinking was.
That's beyond words. Where is he now?
He's serving his 10 life sentences at the El Dorado Correctional Facility in Kansas. Maximum security, obviously. A very different life from the one he pretended to live for so long.
So when you pull it all together, what are the big takeaways from the BTK story?
I think first, it's just that stark reminder that extreme darkness can hide behind a completely ordinary facade. It's unsettling but true.
Yeah, the mask of sanity concept.
Exactly. Second, it's a powerful illustration of how technology, and especially digital forensics, revolutionized crime solving. That floppy disk changed everything after 30 years.
A pivotal moment in investigative history, really.
For sure. And third, it gives us these disturbing but valuable insights into the mind of a certain type of serial killer, one driven by that potent mix of control, psychopathy, and an overwhelming need for recognition.
So the key points are really that shocking duality of his life, the absolute game changer that digital forensics was in his capture, and what we learned about the mindset of a psychopath needing that control and fame.
Precisely. It covered decades, terrorized a city, and ended because of ego and a tiny bit of data.
It really leaves you thinking, doesn't it? What does this whole BTK saga tell us about? Well, about the potential for darkness hidden in plain sight.
Right, and maybe also how profoundly technology has shifted the balance in crime and investigation. It's a different world now than it was in 1974.
Absolutely. Maybe something for our listeners to mull over the psychology of hidden lives and the ever-evolving role of technology in uncovering them.